All right, everyone, it is the Big Boys, episode 2. I don't know what the weight classification is here. I'm 6'1", 210. Uncle Neely, Carl Reed in the show. Fellas, does that count? Am I one of the big boys here?
Let me tell you why it counts, Tolly. Big boys in this sense ain't got nothing to do or nothing too much to do with size. This is big boys in the industry. And when it comes to sports analysis, particularly college football and its impact in African-American culture, you are not only a big boy, Tyler, you might be the biggest boy.
Oh, no. We're going to call this show the Big Boots the way we're starting here. All right, we got Uncle Neely from Thee Pregame Show. We have Carl Reed. He's a college football analyst with 24/7 Sports. Neely, me and you all the time on screen. Let's kick it off with Carl. Carl, the world saw it, man. Colorado knocks off number 17 TCU over the weekend. I already know Neely. He was believing the whole time. What were your thoughts? What were you anticipating before that game started compared to what you saw?
Well, I was in Colorado for practice last week, and when I talked to Coach Prime, he told me, he said, we're going to give TCU a lot of problems. They're not going to be able to defend us. They were hoping that the defense held, which they did, but you're talking 4 receivers over 100 yards receiving. You're talking about Deion Sanders going for 37 for 48, 510 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. They played exactly the way Coach Prime has been telling me for the last several weeks they were going to play, with the way they ran their offense, opportunistic defense, and Travis Hunter, a man amongst men with the way he played the football game. That was not a surprise for me, but just like Neely, we spent a lot of time around the program, so we got an insider's view on how everything was going to go.
All right, and you guys know how Neely works. He can't tell you everything. Neely, you were sandbagging on the information, and I understand why, man. But you told us, you said, when that running back touches the ball, something special is going to happen.
Yes, sir, man. I really think that of all the things I could have divulged that may have tipped the scales for a competitive advantage, I knew the one thing that I could divulge that was just going to be unstoppable, and that was Dylan Edwards. You know, I even had people in the comments on some of our live shows saying, oh, man, you're telling too much about the kid. They're going to be focused and keyed on him. And my reply was, you can't stop him. I can tell you where he's going to be, tell you what he's going to do, and you can't stop him because it is just unmatchable speed. You know, he can come out of the backfield for a check down pass. You can line him up at slot. There's not a linebacker that's going to keep up with him, and not a DB that's going to catch him from behind should he get to that level. Dylan Edwards is special. 4 touchdowns. When you look at those yards that Carl Reed talked about from Deion Sanders, a running back in Dylan Edwards was the number 1 recipient of those reception yards because he can catch an 8-yard pass and take it 70 more.
Carl,
Dylan Edwards was a great pick in recruiting, Neely. When you think about it, Derby High School out of Kansas, he was a part of a lot of winning, played on 2 state championship teams, another team that made it to the state championship and finished as a runner-up. He's had a total skill set for a long time. This was an excellent get for Colorado, and it shows some of their recruiting relationships and recruiting chops and evaluation skills by being able to find a guy like Dylan Edwards and get him signed.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And Coach Flea is so proud of his running back room. Get this, Carl and Tolly. Out of all the groups that travel, now you know there's a limited roster that travels in college football. You had 7 of the 8 running backs make the trip. 7 of the 8 running backs make the trip, man. They all got hands and different running styles. Savion Wilkerson, who came from Jackson State, you know, brings that thump. You know, Dylan Edwards comes in, and you saw what he can do. And don't forget about Hankerson and what he can do. And that's still leaving out Alton McCaskill, the transfer from Houston, who's going to see reps in the future once he's 100%.
Carl, we talk about speed, and we heard all offseason long this was going to be a fast offense. There were some questions about the offensive line. You know, were they deep enough? Were they going to be able to gel quickly? When you saw how fast that team was against TCU on offense, what was your takeaway? What were your thoughts?
Well, you got the proper conductor in Deion Sanders being able to distribute the football effectively. One of the keys to being able to play that fast is having a quarterback who can master the offense, who can get the ball to the right people in the right places at the right time. When you look at the throws that he made, every throw was on the money. It was right where it needed to be. It gave receivers an opportunity to run after the catch because he put it in the right place. You can tell that he has worked really, really hard to master this offense, and he was able to do that.
Carl, and listen up to this, man. When his dad practiced in the NFL, he was practicing against Andre Rison. He was practicing against Jerry Rice. He was practicing against Michael Irvin. When Shador practices, he practices against Travis Hunter. So he sees some of the best coverages he's going to see at practice. So the game day speed and accuracy becomes a little easier because of the margin of error is smaller at practice with Travis. And then Travis is able to flip and go to being his wide receiver one. So Shador Sanders, man, has put in the work. Everybody was asking all off season, we heard this about the SWAC and HBCUs, but we'll see can Daddy Ball, because we know he's just starting because he's the coach's son. We'll see if Daddy Ball works at the Power 5 level. In Colorado history, no quarterback has thrown for 510 in the game, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. I think Daddy Ball is working in Colorado.
Sustainability, guys. We're going to have to do this next week. I say we. Colorado is going to have to do this next week against Nebraska. Nebraska is going to have some film. They're going to have, seen what happened. How sustainable is this effort from an outcome from this past weekend moving forward?
I think that when you look at it, the sustainability of it, I think Colorado has a great coaching staff. Coach Prime did an excellent job identifying the assistance that he needed in the roles that he needed them in. So sustainability a lot of times comes down to coaching. The players are committed. You have a team that has gelled really quickly when you think about the amount of new faces and transfers. Offensive line was a question mark, but they protected them very well, and they answered the call in terms of that. As you play football week in and week out, there's going to be film, there's going to be tendencies, but that also plays out on both sides of the coin as well. So it's going to be interesting to see this team continue to grow and progress over the course of the season, but I like their chances.
Yeah, Carl, I'll take that back half of what you mentioned. Nebraska has had a game, and that film exists, and the analysts and quality control guys that Coach Prime has, in his tent, they've already been looking at that even before, their own team played. But Tolly, I'll go to your first portion as well. I think if there's anything that is not sustainable for this Colorado team that the coaches are already on top of and fixing, we can't give up 40 points every Saturday, and we can't have those glaring breakdowns and miscues on special teams. I think the offense has proven and shown what it can do, and that what they do is sustainable. Now the defense under Charles Kelly's got to rise up to the occasion. I may be wrong on this. I know 0 sacks, but I don't think that D-line had a tackle for loss, a tackle on the other side of the line of scrimmage. And that's something that they're going to focus on, getting to the quarterback, stopping the run, because the errors on special teams and giving up big runs is what kept TCU in the game. And you can't do that for the next 10, 11 weeks in college football.
This is the Big Boys. We got Uncle Neely from the Thee Pregame Show. We got Carl Reed. He's a college football analyst for 24/7 Sports. Hey, Carl, we look at the box score for Travis Hunter. If you watched the game, you saw the impact. But when you look, it's so hard for cornerbacks because everything you do does not show up in the stat sheet. The amount of, your ability to really shut down that side of the field. How impactful was what he did defensively in that game? Never mind the stat sheet. For what you saw with your eyes, how big of an impact was he defensively?
Well, he made it very hard for them to challenge that side of the field. And you saw what happened when they did challenge it with the big interception down the stretch. And you think that you can attack him because he might be tired from the load that he also plays on offense. But he was able to step up in a major way. He graded out very high in terms of PFF performance. When you're talking about the way that they grade defenders on their performances from week to week, I believe he was in the top 5. So Travis Hunter showed that on either side of the ball, he is a real, real problem. And he obviously has done something that nobody has done before. But I'm going to tell you this. You have to play for a coach who allows you to do that. There may have been some guys in the past who could have done what Travis Hunter did, but their coaches didn't have the vision or they didn't have the understanding to allow him to even attempt it. And so somebody like Deion Sanders, who has done it himself, he allowed Travis Hunter to attempt it. And so by him allowing him to attempt it, we got a very, very special once-in-a-age performance.
Absolutely, Carl. And it's one of those things that just because you saw it week 1 on 139 out of 160 plays doesn't mean you're going to see it week 2 or week 3. But guess what you got to do? You got to prepare for it because you know it can happen. And so it also adds in another layer of scheme, for offense and defense. You have the opponent wondering, is he going to play that much or both sides? You may see Travis Hunter returning kickoffs and punts before this season is over because he literally has the skill set, much like his head coach, like you said, Carl, can do everything in all 3 phases of the game if allowed to. I think that, Travis credited his work this offseason in the film room. He didn't spend a lot of time on defense in fall camp. He was getting those routes down and that chemistry with Shedeur down because, as Coach Prime says, he can roll out of bed and play defense. And speaking of rolling, that pick he got wasn't even his assignment. He baited him into that throw and credited his film sessions with it and went over there and got it.
What's crazy, when I was there for spring practice, I didn't see him taking any defensive reps. And I asked Coach Prime, was he going to play defense? He said, yeah, he's going to start on defense. And I said, well, Coach, I've been here for a few days now, and I haven't seen him take one defensive rep. And he pretty much alluded to the same thing you said, that Travis Hunter can roll out of bed and play defense. So he was working on mastering the offense, which is where he spent most of his time in the offseason.
Carl, there's so much discussion about the athletic ability of Travis, and, we hear that for a lot of players. Can you speak to, from your analyst eyes, and you've been in recruiting, just how intelligent he is and how that mix of intelligence and athleticism gives us the type of effort that we saw on Saturday?
Well, he's definitely athletic. His speed and his ability, it jumps off the chart. But you can't do what he did without 2 things: a high level of football intelligence and a high level of commitment to your work ethic every day, from film breakdown to studying the nuances. They have a very voluminous offense in terms of what Sean Lewis is asking them to do on the offensive side of the ball. Charles Kelly, coming from the University of Alabama, we know how much terminology is used in that defense and what he's being asked to do there. And he's learning both of those systems. He's keeping himself in tremendous shape. He's taking care of his body. He's studying film. Neely just told you about him baiting the quarterback into that throw and intercepting it. And so I think we're cheating ourselves and cheating him if we only look at how phenomenal of an athlete he is. He is giving you also a master class on mental toughness.
Carl, man, well said. And let me throw another log on that fire about Travis that people don't recognize or get to see on a day-to-day basis from the outside the program, and that is his extremely competitive nature. He does not want to be that guy that loses a matchup. He doesn't want to be that guy that lets Shedeur down on a route. It's 2 things for sure that Travis Hunter don't play about in a competition regard, and that's his football performance and out there catching bass. He is going to compete and not let up. He wants to be out there every play, and he wants to win and dominate every play, which is why he spends so much time in that film room and in the weight room now and everything it takes to perform, because he don't want you to get the best of him not one time, much like Coach Prime was.
Guys, we saw the outcome on the field. That is one thing. That there is that score. There's a couple of other scores to look at. The exposure score. Carl, you study, not only, football on the field, but the business of sports. If you had to put a rough number on what this weekend did in terms of exposure, and if you could put a valuation on that, like if you tried to buy that exposure that you got this weekend, what type of rough value do you think that is?
It will cost you hundreds of millions of dollars for, what they were able to receive. Number one, you won a football game, and it's so hard to win. People don't understand how hard it is. Number two, you show recruits all over the country. You give yourself a recruiting advantage. When you play in games like that with those kind of eyeballs on the game, you also inspired a lot of coaches. I probably heard from at least 50 African-American coaches over the course of that game, guys that were getting ready to kick off in a couple hours for their own games that were inspired by the performance that they saw Colorado have. Everybody in the country who had an interest in football was tuned in yesterday. So I really don't think you can put a price on what happened yesterday.
Yeah, it would be astronomical, man. It would be one that a check most, if not any institution can write, no matter how many boosters they have. But let's look at it specifically from a Colorado lens. Had the opportunity to talk to Rick George in the locker room, and I said, AD, what does this mean to you? And he said, look, this is why we did it. This is why we did the deal, because he understands even before the TCU victory, when you look at the record pace that season tickets were sold, when you look at the 700% in merchandise this year so far, when only behind Georgia, who won the national championship in merchandise so far, when you look at the spring game, had the record for the highest number of merchandise bought in the team store, no matter when the game, the week in the history of the school. And they were doing all of that before football was played. Now we got a game and you're on national TV, for the kickoff for Fox Sports for college football. So no other eyes are on, but right there at that time, and you win the victory. And Carl, you touched on some of the recruits. TCU had their recruits there on the visit for that weekend. And so they were there along the sidelines, and they were enamored with Coach Prime and his players. So it kind of backfired on them because, they were believing in Vegas. They were supposed to win by 21. So let's bring everybody in and let them see us whoop up on Colorado and Coach Prime. And it backfired. And now we're going to be playing in Texas multiple times a year, across seasons. So what it means for recruitment, what it means for exposure, and thereby enrollment to the school, you cannot put a price on, man. It was an all-around win-win-win. And especially as Carl closed out with that, for the culture, man. Look at how many black coaches out there. And I loved your tweet, Carl. I know we're going to get to it, but look at how many coaches now can have an opportunity from ADs and from chancellors and from these folks who make decisions on these boards of regents of who to hire. Now people know we got to open this thing up, man, and give some black coaches a chance.
Well, Neely with the handoff. I'll just run with the ball here. Here's what Carl Reed tweeted yesterday. Deion Sanders showed athletic departments across the country today that it is okay to hire a black man as a head coach and allow him to be himself, whereas before black coaches had to fit a certain mold. Now administrations are going to see winning and green, when before they could only see black and white. Carl, very eloquent, straight to the point there. What really motivated you to put that out there, Carl?
Well, over the course of the game, I had multiple, and when I say multiple, I mean over 50 black coaches who contacted me while the game was going on. This was before it was even official that Colorado had won the game in terms of what Deion is doing for the culture. Typically, when a black coach is hired, they do have to fit into a certain mold, a certain look. They have to talk a certain way. Deion has been able to go to Colorado and be his authentic self, which is hard for people to be able to do when they get into positions like that. And I think that what you see when you see Deion and you see the way the recruits respond to him, the way the media responds to him, it has to make some administration see, is this the way to go? Football is not what it used to be. The transfer portal is here. NIL is here. Guys that are holding on to the old way of doing things where the coach had total control over every aspect of the player's life, those days are over. And a lot of those coaches are getting out of the game. The next wave of coaches is going to be guys who can adjust to NIL, who can adjust to the transfer portal, who can adjust to mental health and the way they deal with their players and the way they communicate with them, can adjust to the fact that social media is a huge thing that is important to players. And a lot of people that have those backgrounds are also going to be African-American coaches. And so I think it positions people an opportunity to give some of the African-American coaches an opportunity. Tonight, LSU plays Florida State, and two of the top African-American coaches in the country, Brad Davis at LSU, Alex Atkins at Florida State, both offensive line coaches. Atkins is also the offensive coordinator for Florida State. They should be at the top of the list in the future. And so eyes are going to be on them, and it is a credible opportunity that Deion has shined a light on it.
Yes, spot on again, Carl. And, what you're talking about is here and here to stay. NIL ain't going nowhere. It's only going to expand. There's marketing branded opportunities for these unique athletes is only going to expand. We all got a little gray hair. I know Tyler doesn't grow his out, but we remember the days of a Penn State with no names on the back because the only important name was the name on the front. And now you have a maverick like Coach Prime who puts social media hashtags and identifications on the back of jerseys because he understands the importance of branding and marketing and creating your own space. So you have a guy with a gold jacket, which clearly means he knows what he's doing for football. But you look at his 14 years. You look at his 14 years in broadcasting with the NFL Network. He understands the media. You look at his marketing savvy, KFC commercials, almond commercials. I mean, you name it, he's doing it. Why would you go play for someone else, anyone else, when that's the new wave of college football that's here to stay? And when you talk about their recruitment phase, keep in mind, Carl and Tolly, that in this era of college football, each year you got to recruit your own players back. It starts in-house. That was unheard of. You knew you would have your guys that you already got scholarships with. You're just trying to get some high schoolers and a couple transfers. Now, it's free agency every year, and he's able to show guys and prove guys, look what I did for you this year. Look what I can continue to do. And the world is seeing it. And so you're going to have just more attraction to the program to a black head coach at a Power 5 level.
You know, Carl, football is obviously so popular in the South, in the deep South. It just means more. We've heard that so much, especially when people talk about the SEC. Man, I personally still feel like there's still a barrier between, and Deion Sanders is one of one. Let's not just make it seem like there's, Deion Sanders on the shelf at Publix and you can just go pick one up. But man, somebody that unapologetic about who he is. The man think Jesus is AD in the hood in his post-game interview. Like we don't see these things. How much more of a ceiling, if you will, do you think they're still there to break through?
Well, there's definitely a ceiling because you have to know that way works. Up until Deion got to Colorado, up really until yesterday, people thought it was a gimmick. People think that it doesn't work. People want to win. In the SEC, in the South period, football does mean more. It is a religion. It's very serious. And a lot of people just look at it, the SEC. You'll get fired in the South from a Division II school if you don't win, or from a high school. There's middle school coaches who get fired from their history jobs for not winning football games. So it's a very, very serious thing in the South at all levels. The thing is, people want to win. It's built around winning. And so now when you look at Deion's way of doing things versus the normal way that it has been done in the past, if it will help you win, people will give you an opportunity, but they have to be made to believe that way works. And he's going to continue to push the needle in that direction, and we're going to see more of it and more of it as the season goes on.
And it certainly has to work, Carl, financially. You look specifically at Colorado, whatever the overall athletic budget was last year for football, they spent all that to win one game. Whatever they spend in this year, they've not only got that one game, but look at everything else they got with it that comes with the Deion Sanders. So you're going to see more and more of this, man. I think that people are going to know, let these coaches be themselves, let them recruit, the players that they can get there, let them do their thing because they speak the language. They are the culture. Their pulse is on it. And so get out of the way and let them do it. I think that's what's happening, in Colorado under AD Rick George is that, it's prime time in Colorado, man. And anybody who doubted it, for a fact after that victory yesterday.
All right, that was a huge win. Carl, if they welcome Nebraska to Boulder on Saturday and another win, and this team starts out 2-0 and people start talking about 3-0, how big of a start will that be? What will it mean for this team?
Well, you want to take one at a time, so you don't want to talk about 3-0 just yet. But obviously, Nebraska is a long-time old rival for Colorado, going back to the Big 12 days. A lot of big-time games. We remember Tommy Frazier and Lawrence Phillips and those guys in Nebraska, Cordell Stewart, Westbrook, Rashawn Salam, Bieniemy, those guys at Colorado. This is a game that means a lot to most fan bases. For Colorado, the key is going to be offensively to do the same thing. And we talk about the numbers that were put up in the passing game. I don't think that was the most important stat. The most important stat was winning the turnover battle. 0 interceptions to go with those 510 yards, continuing to take care of the football. Defensively, figuring out some of those holes, because Neely was right. He said it at the beginning of the show. You can't give up that amount of points and yards every single week and expect to win. So defensively, do you solve some of the issues there? Special teams, cleaning up some of those mistakes. And offensively, obviously, staying on track the way that you are. that's what's going to give Colorado the best chance to win on Saturday.
You know,
and Carl,
Neely, I want to ask you this specifically. I know you're going to tag team there, and we'll let you have the final word here. Neely, I'm wondering what that crowd explosion is going to be like for the first home game coming off the results from this past weekend.
Hey, that's kind of the direction I was headed in, Tolly, because one thing that I've picked up on, everyone was saying, how is Coach Prime going to get this roster to play together with all this turnover? And he fell back on his NFL days and says it happens every year in the NFL, and they come together and win. And so you saw that victory with guys who hadn't played together before. But here's what's else special about these guys. They're not historic to Colorado or Boulder, but they do understand this Nebraska rivalry. They do understand the attention that's on this game. You don't have to be a Dallas Cowboy long to know that you're supposed to hate the Eagles or vice versa. And that's how it is, Nebraska versus Colorado. These guys may be new to this team and may still be getting the words to the fight song in their vocabulary, but they know this game means more than the TCU game, even though TCU was the first game ranked 17, played the national championship. This is the one. So they're going to want to put up more than 40 plus. They're going to want to play more than mistake free, and they're going to want to do it in front of that raucous home crowd at Folsom Field, which is known as one of the roughest, toughest places to play because there is no sideline. The field is right up against the first row. You can reach down and touch players on the head, man. So it's going to be electric when Ralphie runs out there for the first time. Coach Prime ran out in TCU, but I don't know if he's got the speed back to keep up with Ralphie yet. But he's going to run out in that field, man. That place is going to explode. If it had a roof, the roof would come off.
Well, Neely, I know you have your camera out there, man, and you're always on the front row. Don't get run over by Ralphie, please. We need you, Neely.
Oh, okay? You bet not. You bet not get run over by Ralphie. I'm going to be on you, boy.
Let me tell you something. I'm like Coach. I'm from the hood, man. I don't play with animals like that. I ain't finna be nowhere near Ralphie. They say Ralphie eat grass and fruits and beer. I don't know that. I'm going to be the other way and let Ralphie go first. I ain't going in front of Ralphie.
Hey, man, he might see that beard of yours and think it's another flavor of grass. So you better watch out. We are the big boys, but we are not that big. You got to give Ralphie his respect. Hey, Carl Reed from 24/7 Sports, man. We appreciate your time. Uncle Neely, as always, man. Looking forward to doing this all season long with you guys. This is The Big Boys.